Zoom. So I'm Hannah Oden, Planning Coordinator with PAG.
I'm Jeanette D. Ryan, Transportation Planning Director here at PAG.
Kristen Falls with Kimley Horn.
Joannes with Kimley Horn.
Dawn Garcia with Pat.
Coordinator in-house Chavez with the town of Oro Valley.
I'm Anona Miller with the University of Arizona.
Ben Elias, I'm a lead planner with the city of Tucson.
Ryan Fagan, City of Tucson. Dustin Dispatcher, Air Quality Manager at PAG.
Thank you. And then I'll just go down the list. I'm on Zoom for the order that they appear. So Davida, go ahead. You can go ahead and unmute yourself. I'm gonna just provide a brief introduction. And Davida, if you are talking, you're still muted. All right. So if you're able to mute yourself, Davida, and we can come back to you. Jason.
Jason Bahi, Pasquayaki Tribe. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Mark Hoffman.
Good morning, Mark Hoffman, ADOT Planning.
Okay, thank you, Mark. And then Stephen Dean.
Yes, Stephen Dean, I'm Town of Marana Development Services Deputy Director.
Okay, thank you. And then an attendee. So Elaine.
Merrill, ADOT Active Transportation Planner.
All right, thank you, Elaine. I don't think I've missed anyone. And just a note, if you do have to hop off, please let us know, just so we can make sure that we maintain quorum throughout the meeting. All right, we can go ahead and move on to the next agenda item. And so we'll turn it over to Kimley Horn.
All right, thank you. And thank you all for joining us in person and virtually. We really appreciate the time. So today we're going to give you a bit of an overview of what the Regional Active Transportation Plan process is going to look like. We're going to look at what the expectations of this group are. So as far as, what we're going to be asking you to do, when we're going to be asking you to do it, and then we'll talk through, we have some drafts, a vision statement, goals, objectives, and performance metrics. So we'll step through those. And then we'll talk about what the next steps are going to be here coming up in the process. If at any point you want to interject, please do. It's intended to be a working group, so it doesn't have to be very formal. Just raise your hand, or if you're on Zoom, just feel free to chime in whenever you have a question or want to discuss anything. So starting off with what our team looks like here. So PAG is obviously our client. Kristen and I are here with Kimley Horn and Associates. So we're the prime consultant, and then we do have two sub-consultants working with us on our team. One is Alta Planning and Design. We're going to be working with them a little bit later in the process to do a lot of the technical analyses that go into identifying where potential corridors for improvements, active transportation improvements are going to be, and then prioritizing those so that we're making really strong investments. And then the second is Gordley Group. Many of you are probably familiar with them. They're based here in Tucson, public involvement firm. So you'll see as we talk through the process here, there's quite a bit of in-person public engagement that we're going to be doing, and Gordley Group is going to help us lead those opportunities for people to chime in. Already did introductions, so I'll skip right past that and we'll go into the RATP overview. So we wanted to start with kind of what's the purpose of this plan. So PAG did separate pedestrian and bicycle plans quite a while ago. They're in need of a refresh. And the few things that we're looking to do with this planning process is, number one, we want to get really strong existing conditions data that is consistent across the region. So right now, a lot of data is kind of housed within individual member agencies or with ADOT. And so we want to bring all that together, make it consistent across jurisdictional boundaries, and make that available to you as member agencies. Number two is establish a cohesive regional active transportation vision. So, what are the type of facilities we want to use? Where do we want them to be? We want to make sure there's no mismatches at jurisdictional boundaries. We want to prioritize investments in transportation. So I mentioned we'll be doing a lot of technical analysis on that front, as well as doing stakeholder engagement with this group and public engagement in a number of venues across the region. We want to establish preferred active transportation agreements so that things that the city of Tucson is doing, Pima County is also doing, Oro Valley is also doing. So we want to make sure that people don't really care where jurisdictional boundaries are. They just are trying to get from A to B. And so they're having consistent facilities that they know how to use and drivers know what to expect. And last and very importantly, actually, is building momentum for investing in active transportation. So a big part of the planning process here and why we want to do so much public engagement is to get people interested and involved. And in some areas of the region where active transportation may not have been as high a priority as other areas, we really want to get everybody up to the same level of excitement. As far as our scope of work, it's broken down into 6 main steps here. We'll step through each of those briefly. So first up is vision, goals, and objectives. So as I mentioned, we do have a preliminary vision statement, goals and performance metrics that we'll be stepping through today. We also have some very draft illustrative renderings of different facility types and a couple locations we've selected for transformational changes as an example of, this is what it looks like when you reconstruct a location. As part of this task, we're also doing our first round of public and stakeholder engagement, really focused on visioning, and we'll talk a little more about that here in a second. And then we'll put that all together in our first working paper called Vision, Goals, and Objectives, which you all will have an opportunity to review in its draft form once we have put that together. We'll also do a round of updates to various PAG committees. And you can see the deliverables from this task are all listed at the bottom of this slide there. Next step is our regional connectivity analysis. So this is where we do a lot of our data collection, where we're trying to put together and smooth out data from various sources across the region, across the state, to make them consistent. We'll also do a previous plan and policy review. So we'll dive into what each member agency has done as far as active transportation planning or general transportation planning that may have an impact on active transportation. We'll look into policies from each jurisdiction to see if there's things like complete streets. And we'll also be pulling out previously recommended active transportation investments from each of those plans as well, so that we're not starting from scratch. We're staying true to what previous planning processes have found at a local level and make sure we're incorporating that up into our regional plan for consideration. We'll put that together in an existing and future conditions analysis, and then create a working paper from that as well. So this next step here, you'll see it's a long list of technical analyses that we'll be getting into. This is where we'll be drawing really heavily from Alta Planning and Designs. They have a lot of proprietary tools to do this. So we'll do a regional level of traffic stress analysis, an equity and public health analysis, a regional travel pattern analysis where we'll be leveraging the regional travel demand model. We'll be looking at a safety analysis. So we've already pulled down the last 5 years of crash data available from ADOT. We'll be diving into that in much more detail when we get to step 3 here. Connectivity analysis, where we want to see where are short trips that are being done by auto that we could potentially convert to active transportation trips if the right facilities are in place. And then we'll begin to put together packages of corridor improvements that we will ultimately take forward and present to the public and do a whole prioritization process where we determine what we think are the best investments for the region into active transportation. Again, we'll wrap that up into another working paper, the alternatives analysis and draft recommendations, and then do another round of committee updates to the various PAG committees. Step 4 here, this is going to happen concurrently with that previous step where we're doing technical analysis. We really want to create a toolbox of potential treatments that are acceptable to the region as a whole. So this is getting to that, how do we string active transportation facilities across jurisdictional boundaries? And so we'll create an outline and then do a working session with some select stakeholders to try to put together a toolbox of regionally preferred active transportation treatments so that we get more consistency, and then develop design standards for those treatments. And then again, we'll put that together in another working paper for you all to review, the active transportation toolbox. And we also do with this one have a highly graphical executive summary, because this may be something that you as staff will want to present to your elected officials. And so we'll put it together in a very concise way to show that to the public, elected officials, or whoever you need to. A small task here, it really draws on what was done in that task 3, where we're doing all of the technical analyses. We'll use the travel demand model and other tools to figure out, if we make these investments, what could that impact be on reducing carbon emissions. And so again, that'll be an ALTA planning and design task where they have a lot of tools that they've developed and calibrated nationwide to calculate this reduction. And then our last step here is actually developing the plan itself. So we'll put together a draft RATP and executive summary. This third round of public and stakeholder engagement will really be, number one, letting people know that the draft plan is available for their comment. But number 2, this is where we really want to get out there and be cheerleaders for active transportation in the region, get people excited. As we go into the adoption process, we want to keep that momentum going after the fact of, having people pushing for more active transportation investment in the region. After we do get the plan adopted, we'll go ahead and finalize the document and the executive summary, get that out to PAG to distribute to member agencies as well. Before I move on to the next piece here, which is public engagement, any questions on the scope of work from the group here in the room or out?
And if anyone online has a question, just feel free to raise your hand, or you can unmute yourself.
All right, we'll keep going. So our public and stakeholder engagement, as you saw previously, is split into 3 different phases. Number 1 is visioning. Number 2 is presenting our initial recommendations and allowing people to review that. And last is review of the draft RATP and promoting active transportation in the greater Tucson region. So round 1, we've broken it up into, in each of these rounds, you'll see content, what we're doing for virtual public engagement, what we're doing for in-person engagement, and then what we're doing specifically for stakeholder engagement. So this first piece, we're going to be introducing people to the plan and the process. So a much more streamlined version of what you all just heard me go through. We'll present to the public. We'll allow people to review our vision statement, allow them to rank our draft goals. This will help us down the line in our prioritization process when we're selecting corridor improvements. And then identifying locally preferred transportation treatment. So this is where we have some illustrative renderings that we're still putting together, but you'll see a sneak peek of here. Will allow people to, essentially a visual preference survey. Would you prefer, a parking protected bike lane or a physically protected bike lane with barriers, that sort of thing. We'll also have a web map available for people to drop pins and tell us where there's hazards or deficiencies in the active transportation system now. So this will help us, number 1, identify potential projects, and number 2, help us figure out where this may impact our prioritization of there's a lot of interest in active transportation in this area versus somewhere else. So all 3 rounds are hybrid, in-person, and virtual engagement. So our virtual piece here I mentioned, we're going to have a mapping platform. We're also going to have that virtual survey tool. They're linked together, so it's just one link we send people to the virtual map, and then they can click on a pane for the survey right from there. As for in-person engagement, we're going to do 4 pop-up or piggyback events. So we're currently identifying potential events that we can go to and set up a booth, or locations that may be good to just pop up and grab people as they walk past, to get a lot of the same information that we're getting from the virtual survey. Also, we'll have cards that we can hand out with a QR code or a website that people can just go do the virtual survey later if they're busy and don't want to talk active transportation. We're identifying those events. If we can't find anything that we feel like is bringing enough people, we do have in our scope that we can't do a couple standalone open houses in lieu of those piggyback events, but we're really trying to get out into the community and get a more representative cross section than people who would normally show up to a public open house on a early evening on a Thursday or something. So, and then finally, our stakeholder engagement. So this is our first technical working group meeting. So that's that TWG meeting there. Again, we'll also do presentations as directed by PAG to the TPC, the management committee, and the regional council. Round 2. So the content here, you can see we're going to provide the results of the technical analysis that was done in that task 3. We're going to introduce our initial improvement alternatives and allow people to react to that, and then present initial prioritization. So which of those initial alternatives are we seeing pop to the top of the list of things that we feel are really good investments for the region. Again, we'll be using that same mapping platform to show where the prioritized alternatives are. So we'll map them all and then have different colors for high priority, medium priority, low priority, that sort of thing, and allow people to agree or disagree with that prioritization. In person, again, targeting up to 4 pop-up or piggyback events. This will be a little later in the year, and give them a voting exercise and provide feedback on that same content that we're promoting online. Our stakeholder engagement. So as I mentioned, there's a task for that active transportation toolbox. We'll be doing a working session for that. We'll have another technical working group meeting before this goes out to the public, as well as another round of presentations to the various committees. And then finally, round 3. So this is where it's more informational, distributing out to the public. So the final list of prioritized project alternatives, the final active transportation toolbox, as well as the draft RATP document for people to comment on. Virtual engagement. So again, a mapping platform to show the prioritized list of projects. We'll be developing in coordination with PAG's website folks, an interactive active transportation toolbox. We want people to be able to go to a website and work through, what are the best types of treatments for various conditions that are, present when you're doing your own active transportation planning at the local level. We'll link to the draft RATP document and executive summary, and have a comment tool to be able to allow people to review the RATP and provide whatever comments they see fit. Again, up to 4 pop-up or piggyback events in person. We'll have maps of the recommendations and preferred active transportation treatments, and a form if people want to fill it out there in person on the draft RATP. Stakeholder engagement. So you'll see some similar things in there: technical working group meeting, presentations to the various councils, but also we'll do a round of presentations to your member agency, either council or planning commission or whatever you think is the best fit. So we'll be going back to this group to see, number 1, do you want a presentation like that to your agency specifically? And number 2, what's the best group to present to get feedback on the draft RATP? Any questions on that? I know it's a lot of information. Yes, please.
One question I had relates back to presenting out to commissions. We have the regional fiscal advisory committee. And I'm sure they would love a presentation at that kind of final round of engagement, but I also know there are some members on the BAC who would probably like to be involved at an earlier stage if possible.
Okay.
And to what extent, I don't necessarily know, but some folks might be really interested in the getting in the weeds on toolbox and what those treatments might look like. And some might just have some more general comments. So more of just a note for the team to maybe consider the Complete Streets Coordinating Council from the city of Tucson and the Regional Bicycle Advisory Committee.
Great. Yeah, perfect. Great comments. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
Not seeing any hands online. If you are an attendee, feel free to just unmute yourself if you have a question.
All right. Peek at the schedule here. So we got started back in February. We're, more than halfway through our goals, objectives task here. You can see we have 4 technical working group meetings envisioned for the process. If there is a need that pops up to do more, we're totally fine with doing more. So one, late April here, our next one, we have a break here, or you'll have a break from us rather, while we do a lot of the technical analyses. And as we get toward the end of getting some initial results from that, we'll come back to you. We think that'll probably be in the early September timeframe. After we get through our active transportation toolbox and carbon reduction, we'll have another meeting to review kind of the final results from all the technical analyses and that active transportation toolbox effort to get your buy-in on that. And finally, one last one in February of next year. This is while we're finalizing the draft RATP, so we'll put that in your hands, give you some time to work through it and give us feedback. As you can see, after the public engagement almost always follows directly after a technical working group meeting. So we really want to run everything by you first before we take it out to the public. And then we'll incorporate any feedback you give us before we present that to a wider audience. Looking to finalize the project in about a year from now. We have a hard stop at the end of June with the end of the fiscal year. So we have a couple months of slack in there just in case, but really hoping to keep it moving through the process here. Quick section here on just what we're going to be asking for from you. So you can see our little org chart for our planning team here, and the technical working group really fits between us and PAG. We really want to get your input on everything that we draft, all of our plans for public engagement. And we really see you fitting in as kind of, PAG staff make the ultimate decision here, but really want your advice at all the key points along the way. So again, it's made up of technical staff working at member agencies. We're asking you to review draft materials and provide comments. We want input and advice for PAG and the consultant team as we move through the process. You all are much more connected in your individual agencies to preferences of public, preferences of your elected officials. And so we really want to get your input at key points in the planning process. Also, so we have, 1 or 2 members on the technical working group from each member agency, but depending on the size of your organization, there could be, 10 other people that could have worthwhile input. And so we really want you to coordinate within your individual agencies with other people that might be interested to put all your comments together when you're reviewing our draft materials or reviewing our public involvement activities. And so to keep this group at a manageable size, we only have a couple people from each agency, but we really do want you to coordinate internally and put this in front of people that may be interested. Again, supporting our technical analyses. A big one, which we'll get to here toward the end, is advertising public engagement opportunities. We really want to leverage each of you and your communications or PIOs groups to get the word out. And then finally, as I mentioned, there could be presentations to each one of your agency planning commissions or councils. Help us coordinate the scheduling and getting on the agenda for those. All right, to give you all a break from listening to me forever, I'm going to hand it over to Kristen to talk through our draft vision and goals. And this is where we do really want this to be interactive. So we're going to go through goal by goal to show you what we've come up with between us as the consultant team and PAG staff. But very, very open to feedback, or especially when we're looking at performance metrics here, we want to find things that are reasonable for PAG to track over time and tell us if we're truly making progress towards our active transportation goals.
Awesome. So before we actually dive into vision goals, objectives, and performance metrics, we wanted to chat through kind of how we got to the existing vision and goals that we have developed. So part of some of our initial work for the project was going through the existing and previous plans that were done in the PAG region, as well as other peer region active transportation plans, to understand what are the themes that may be identified within those plans, goals, objectives, and performance metrics that we want to loop in as we look at the region holistically. So just a few themes that came from that analysis: collaboration with surrounding agencies. That was very big amongst the plans we reviewed from the member agencies. Provide a continuous active transportation network, so filling in any gaps, making it so that it's useful and comfortable for people to use. Providing access to major activity centers, and then connecting the active transportation network to transit. That came up in a lot of the plans as well. So that's kind of where we started, and then we grew them from there. So just wanted to give you that background as we jumped into the vision and goals. And then these visions, the vision and goals will be used to communicate then with the public. So we want to make sure that we get your buy-in early on so that we can take those forward. So looking at our draft vision statement, we have so far the PAG region will develop and maintain an active transportation network that is safe, comfortable, and convenient for residents, employees, and visitors. Anyone have any initial thoughts on this?
Very, very macro in that book.
I think desirable would be the adjective to put in there.
That's great. Yeah, anything else? Are there any keywords that you think we should be hitting that are not currently within this vision statement?
I would think about including for all ages and abilities.
Great. Anything else? Anything from anyone online?
Hi, this is Davida. I think the word accessible would be really nice in all of its connotations.
That's a great addition as well.
Yeah, it's really hard not to write an entire paragraph in
Yeah.
a vision statement, but we'll do our best to
Yeah.
get insights.
Awesome. Then we can move into the first goal. So we can start with the goal statement, and then we can move by objective and then performance metric. So just a quick overview of kind of how these goals and performance metrics are trickling down from the vision statement. So the goal should be like an overarching thing that we want to accomplish. And then the objective is to then break that goal down further, like what actually needs to happen to be able to meet that goal. And then the performance metric is something that the region can check off to make sure that we've hit that objective. So just providing some insight on that. So goal 1 is create design standards for consistent regional active transportation infrastructure that is safe, comfortable, and visible for users of all abilities. Any comments on this goal to start out?
Maybe all ages and abilities
Awesome.
is.
Yeah, that's a great point. Anything else? If not, I can jump into objective 1.
So what resonated with me from the previous statement was that there was convenient, right? This is where we're trying to get people to do that switch from automotive focus to active transportation, and safe and comfortable. It could be the same or at least phrased in the same bucket of sorts, but the convenient piece is where you're going to get that switch. So we're not so car heavy and people are supportive of that.
Yeah. That's a great point as well. We can jump into objective 1 then. Promote cohesive design of active transportation infrastructure across jurisdictional boundaries. So wanting to make sure that if you're using an active transportation facility in like Oro Valley, it will look similar to maybe what's in Tucson once you pass that boundary. So for the performance metric that goes along with that objective, we have established a set of regionally preferred design standards for active transportation facilities that incorporate heat reduction strategies. So making sure that it is feasible in our designs to actually use active transportation as it gets hotter throughout the year. Any comments on that objective and performance metric?
I guess I just have a thought when I see promoting cohesive design, because like in some cases, as soon as you cross jurisdictional boundaries, the roads are very different. Like, you go from the city to the county and suddenly the roads are like way wider. There's really wide shoulders. And so I don't know if cohesive quite covers it. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but like cohesive and compatible, something like that, just so that there is, at least as you cross jurisdictional boundaries, it might not be the exact same treatment that you're that exists, the exact same kind of protected bike lane or shared use path or whatever, but as long as those provide connectivity and are understandable and easily used by people who are crossing those boundaries.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Yeah, it still needs to be context appropriate for the road and the land use and all of that. So yeah, I think that's a really good add to that statement.
So anything else on objective 1?
And just for my curiosity, what kind of heat reduction strategies are we talking? Like landscaping for shade, or?
Yeah, it could be at along a linear facility having more shade trees, at a crossing having shade structures while people are waiting to cross the street. Yeah, there's could be incorporating grass into some things where there's a cooling effect that comes from that. So yeah, when we get to the active transportation toolbox and the design standards that go along with it, we'll be looking to integrate that in.
I had one question, and maybe this is gonna come out in a different part or a different goal, but I was wondering what the kind of exploration is for equity as far as the transportation connectivity and making sure that the network is also available to all users of all income levels.
Yeah, we do have a goal coming up that hits more directly on equity, sustainability, and health. But yeah, great point.
Online?
I'm not seeing any hands up. So again, if you have anything or anyone online has a question, just feel free to unmute yourself and jump in at any time.
So we can move on to objective 2 then. So support member agencies in incorporating complete street principles in their general plans and other relevant plans. And then the performance metric, identify gaps in the complete street policies in the region and meet with applicable jurisdictions to work toward adopting complete streets into their policies and development workflows. If there's no comments, then I can move to objective 3.
We nailed it on that one.
Awesome. Okay, objective 3, support member agencies in reducing the frequency and severity of active transportation involved crashes. And then the performance metric, reduce active transportation fatalities and serious injuries in the PAG region by 20% by 2030. And then that's one thing with this goal, and then also some upcoming performance metrics is that a lot of these goals that we're aiming to reduce by either a certain percentage or something like that, we are looking for kind of your input on maybe how aggressive we want to be with some of those annual performance metrics. So
Yeah, and we have a couple different ways we've listed it in here, and I think it would be good to be consistent. So this one is, a percentage by a year that's, 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Some of them would be a smaller percentage annually. I think we want to make that consistent across goals and get your input on, what you think is, do we aim for something more aggressive longer term, or do we look for incremental improvements year over year? So this one we threw in a straw man of 20% by 2030, but if you in working in your agencies have come up with similar goals and it's a different percentage, we'd love input on that. So
Did the 20% come from anywhere in particular? Or is that based? Okay.
So and some of them, you'll see we just have like an X% right now as we move into some of the future goals here. And it's because we haven't done the analysis to get a baseline yet to see how aggressive we think we may need to be. So I think it's on the next one and we can probably talk about it there, but it'll, X percentage of residents are within a quarter mile of a high quality bike facility or something like that. We don't know at this point, are 5% of people already within that quarter mile or 75%? I think that would kind of help dictate too. So these will probably evolve a little bit as we move through the process here, but we just, trying to get an initial gut check on the performance metrics.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
This is Mark. I just wondered, I couldn't remember what the governor's goal was that the state is using for reducing. I don't know if it was the 20% or if it was a different number. Elaine, do you remember? It was in the presentation that we did to the COGS and MPOs about that percentage. I was just curious.
It looks the same.
It's same. Okay, it's consistent with that. Okay.
Yeah, and I noticed that actually. I thought that was great. It was consistent.
Kimberly Horn is also doing the statewide active
Yes.
safety action plan, so I might have just learned that from osmosis in my office. Or actually, you probably wrote this initially, and you're working on that. So.
Okay, awesome. So,
I have a lot of thoughts about like goals like this, like why not say 100%? Like what I mean, a plan like this I don't think is going to really have teeth to say, well, if we don't hit that metric, then, we have to do X, but, I guess I would be interested in seeing like previous plans. Like I haven't looked at PAG's bike and pedestrian plans in a long time, so I don't remember what those were, but it'd be interesting to look at the goals that were set in those and if, what the outcome was and, what changes were made, I guess, in furtherance of trying to reduce those crashes. But I lost my train of thought there.
Can I piggyback?
Yes, please.
I was just gonna say, we've had the same discussions around performance metrics with our RMAP discussion with various, member jurisdictions too. And that came up as like if we're shooting for Vision Zero, why not say 100%? Or really attack, like dramatically reduce fatalities and severe injuries. So yeah, I'm open to any and all of that discussion. I'm sure some people will have strong opinions on that. Moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the federal SS4A program requires that when you're doing anything with that type of funding. Are there Vision Zero statements adopted by any agencies in the region thus far? Do we know?
We'll see if Pima County, what they move forward with their SS4A work going forward.
Yep.
But to my knowledge, no.
Okay.
Yeah, so thank you for letting me follow up. I guess I would like to see it be like the plan be data driven in terms of like, are the kinds of improvements that we expect to see completed by 2030, like, do we have data? Are there crash modification factors, you know, for example, for the kind of treatments that are being recommended for streets that are having, you know, more of these kinds of crashes? And if we actually, you know, if the jurisdictions build out improvements, you know, on a reasonable schedule by 2030, would we actually reasonably expect to see a reduction by 20% based on, you know, what we know about the stats behind those kinds of improvements? I think that would just at least, I think, ground it in reality a little more than just picking a number.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting because when we get to our final list of recommended projects, I don't know yet if we're going to tie it to a specific time frame or just give it a prioritization of, you know, start toward the top and work your way down. But I think that we could, you know, all the high priority projects, if those are done, we should see, you know, X number of reduced crashes because we do have CMS for all of those. So that's actually an interesting idea of how to approach this one that we hadn't thought of. I like that.
I mean, I almost think that the goal, that percentage should be based on like the actual proposed projects and what we expect the outcomes of those to be.
Yeah, so we'll probably have to have a placeholder in this one. And then as we get toward the end of the project, that's when we can actually establish that based on what the final projects are that get included in the recommendations. But yep, I like that.
Thank you.
So just to wrap up goal 1, we have these 3 objectives here. Is there anything else that you think that we may have missed when it comes to objectives when talking about the design standards?
I don't know if we want something in there about like follow national best practices, you know, design guidance, that sort of thing. That might.
On that note, do we want to adopt the PROAG locally since it's now completed? Public right-of-way accessibility guidelines.
Yeah. Does anyone have opinions on that?
I will tell you for Suntran, we are adopting them based on bus stops.
Okay.
For front door and back door boarding, both being able to alight onto that firm, stable, slip resistant surface.
Does anyone have any opposition to that? Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, we can move on to goal 2. So here's the first highlighted objective in here, so we can chat about that when that comes. But goal 2 is going to be more related to maintenance. So we covered the standards and now we're going to move on to actually maintaining the facilities. So plan for the maintenance of active transportation facilities. Pretty straightforward goal. Any comments on it before we move into the objectives? Okay. Objective 1, we have promote well-maintained active transportation facilities across jurisdictional boundaries. And then the performance metric that goes with that is establish a set of regionally preferred maintenance procedures for active transportation facilities.
So this would be incorporated into that toolbox that we develop is what are the recommended maintenance strategies that go along with that.
Any comments on objective 1? Okay. Objective 2, track the physical condition of active transportation facilities. Performance metric, develop regional tools to measure and track the physical condition of active transportation facilities.
So if this relates to, we only track it if we know, if we're consistently going out and getting that condition data to measure how we're doing.
And is the input from, do we have like 311 streets or whatnot where the residents can make those comments, take pictures and send that in, and there's like a collective way, or is this data that's tracked by each jurisdiction and we'll go out and measure that?
It could be either. We haven't gone through the process to figure out exactly what this could look like yet, but that's a really interesting point. Is that, so does each agency have their own 311 and are they consistent as far as, what people are able to do across the region? I'm not sure. But it is a good tool where it's available to kind of measure, what are the, we can track number of complaints per year, number of issues raised per year, something like that. Yeah.
Any other comments on objective 2?
Just building off, so if it is input from jurisdiction, then I think you're gonna need that a policy or some way so that all the data comes in consistently. And we kind of do with the greenhouse emissions, so that's been going through and asking and knocking on doors for that. And then is that replicable for this instance and then sustainable for turnover and things like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dustin, you ready to add another 50% to your job?
Big network.
Yeah, I think that's one thing. If we do go forward with this objective and performance metric, is figuring out what does that process look like and what's going to be the ask of PAG staff and then the ask of member agency staff.
So Kristen, if I can add to this, I think there's some data sets that we have that can be used to track elements of this. So we will be collecting, hopefully we'll be getting the Acopia data set, which really is going to show gaps. So it's not going to necessarily show conditions on a real granular level, but it will show kind of an overall condition. So at that point, when we have a big regional data set, it could be where we work with each jurisdiction specifically to kind of do some ground truthing, if you will, and looking at what you have from a maintenance log or however you guys track it with what we're kind of seeing at a ortho level, a data extraction level, and kind of working together to build that. And we do a lot of that with like traffic signal technology, where we work directly with Oro Valley, Marin, and the city and the county to make sure that we're sort of working towards that bigger picture. So I think there's definitely there's some feasibility behind a performance metric like that.
Great. Okay. So objective 3, improve the physical condition of active transportation facilities. The performance metric is reduce the mileage of active transportation facilities in poor condition by X%. So like we talked about, since we haven't done our baseline conditions analysis yet, that will have to be informed following that analysis. Any comments on this objective or performance metric? Objective 4, evaluate the feasibility of maintaining recommended active transportation facilities. So for the performance metric, conduct a review of recommended active transportation treatments and maintenance procedures during each RMAP update process.
Yeah, so this, we really want to try things and then have a recurring process set up where every few years we go back and we say, all right, this type of facility is just causing a maintenance headache for this reason, whether it's the landscaping or the paint or whatever it is. And we may need to tweak that to be something slightly different. And so staff's idea was our map comes up every 4 years, right? So it's enough time to try some improvements and see how they go from a maintenance standpoint, and then give a little feedback loop there on if we need to make adjustments.
That'd also be a good time to look at innovation as well. So if you guys have tried something that might be applicable to other parts of the region, or if you guys have a new specification that you guys created for a specific location, or to handle a certain type of condition, it would be a 4-year opportunity to share that and either incorporate that at a region level, or to talk about some of the challenges, especially with maintenance and operations of those facilities.
Any comments on this one?
I know maintenance is what everybody came here for.
Yes. Okay, any comments on goal 2 as a whole, or we ready to move on to goal 3? Goal 3. Okay, so this one is probably our most data-driven goal. So continually collect and track active transportation data to support data-driven decision-making. Any comments on the goal statement? Okay. Objective 1, expand data collection efforts to better understand active transportation travel characteristics. The performance metric is to create a tool to process, censor, and crowdsource data to track and model active transportation travel behavior. Any comments on this one? Questions?
I think I have one kind of overall based on this goal. If we continually collect and track the information, is there a plan, either an objective or strategy, to get that information to somebody to repair it if it's not in good condition? So it's great to collect the data, but if it just sits and doesn't go to the next step, maybe that's in goal 4, but somewhere in here, I think if we continue collect and track, but there's something that's egregious, immediately it's sent to the right person to correct.
So you're saying, like, if the data collected, there's like a failure in a sensor or something like that, is what
Or if you're collecting data on a sidewalk and you see that, or use a road, there's like a huge pothole. Just collecting the data doesn't help us if that condition is hazardous.
Yeah,
That we have a place where in this area where we have a place to also, if it's identified as a hazard, that we get it reported. So it can be taken care of as we're collecting data, as opposed to waiting until it's all finished.
Yeah, I think that's maybe in the last one. We had a performance metric that was develop regional tools to measure and track condition. I think that might be something we can add on that objective about flagging hazardous conditions identified through the data collection.
Yeah, I think that would be good, because we recently had something similar where they collected all the data and then it sat for 2 months before anybody even saw it. And there were a couple things that needed to be taken care of immediately.
I think that might track with whatever the goal 2, objective 1 was, kind of developing those standards, and maybe that can speak to more regional best practices for maintenance procedures, where if we do see there's a major deficiency and a, real safety concern right off the bat, that to the best of our ability, we can prepare that ASAP.
Or at least identify who it needs to be sent to and get it on their radar. And it popped up when we were reading goal 3. Because if we're continuously collecting data, we got to be able to do something with it if it needs it immediately.
Yep. Good point. Thank you.
Awesome. Objective 2, develop regional tools to track safety trends by location and gaps in active transportation facilities and heat mitigation elements. The associated performance metric is meet the 2045 targets for the active transportation performance measures identified in the PAG RATP.
You want to expand on what those are at all?
You want me to?
Like the RMAP, performance measures.
Yeah, so we do have a set of RMAP performance measures, which we can send out to this group. I know some of you have probably already seen those, but we do track a set of safety performance measures specifically for bikes and peds. So, and they include, the data includes a 5-year average, a benchmark, which is kind of where we're at, a target, which is where we're headed. And then we discuss the trend. So are we moving in what direction are we moving? So this planning process is running kind of concurrently with the RMAP update process. So a lot of you guys are involved in some of those same committees. And so we've looked at the performance measures in terms of, what do we want to see by right now? It's the 2045 targets. We're going to have 2055 targets before this project is over. So we'll say, meeting what those 2055 targets are in terms of reduction we're really focusing on serious injuries and fatalities. So those are more easily tracked performance measures. So we review those every 4 years, but they're also the same performance measures that are used in the TIP, which is typically every 2 years. So we're reporting out on them fairly regularly. So that's what they are and what we're looking at here for this PM.
Relating back to this performance metric, we might want to specify, meet the 2045 or 2055 if we have them available by the time that this gets wrapped up, for measures for bicycle, pedestrian, and transit. I think transit is really the ones where we're actually meeting those currently for the region, but just to kind of have all those pieces talk to each other.
Great. So anything else for this goal? Do you think that these objectives cover this goal? Do you think we need any more objectives?
I do have a question. So for objective 1, expand data collection effort. So what do we have in place right now? I know we do the annual bike ped count. Is there something else that we have in that wheelhouse that we're expanding? And if not, is there some way to have some more innovation to it where it's not a volunteer and a clipboard counting?
Yeah, so that performance metric is, exactly that. How do we expand on just an annual count we do each year? And so there are sensors you can embed into active transportation facilities that will count, and they can differentiate between pedestrians and bicyclists and scooter riders and whoever else. But there is also the trade-off of maintaining that. But it is kind of cool if you have some kind of marquee facilities like the Loop or something. You can put up the signs that say, this many people have walked and biked on this year. And when you walk past, you can see it go up by 1, and it's kind of cool just to get people interested. But then additionally, more and more, there's resources out there that collect like cell phone data. And so that's what that crowdsourced data is. where it can tell if you're walking or biking for a trip and the path you took, and PAG or member agencies can purchase that data from these providers and track it over time. So that's the much more resource or infrastructure light way to go. And so there's
sorry to interrupt, but
No, you're
we do purchase crowdsourced data right now. And so we're working internally to try to build the active transportation portions of that crowdsourced data. So if you think about your GPS data on your phone, it tracks your car trip. So we're trying to figure out a way to use that to pull out the active transportation trips. So we have, like with transit, we have good numbers. We know who's getting on, where they're going, where they're getting off. But we're trying to use more of the crowdsourced. We're also using, we're doing a project with U of A right now to use the MyoVision cameras to detect pedestrian and bike activity. So right now they're really good at collecting the data on the cars and trucks that are going through, but to continue to refine that technology so it is more beneficial to look at those the smaller trips on bikes and by pedestrians. So it's evolving. Like this is like so brand new. It's exciting. But yeah, we are purchasing those data sets and then, you know, continuing to get in the weeds and figure out the best way to use them specifically for active transportation.
Yeah, a lot of the big data providers, you know, it used to just be car trips, but they've added on active transportation. Some of them even say up front, you know, it's not like great right now, but as Jeanette mentioned, they're continuously refining that, and it's becoming more cost effective to get that data. And it's really fruitful for like your travel modeling group to be able to use that to help calibrate the regional model at the same time. So there's a lot of benefits that come out of getting that data at the regional level.
So leave your location tracker on your phone. Keep that on.
It might behoove us to build into this goal or objective, similar to the maintenance piece, is have some sort of way to continually update how that data is being collected, or if there are more specific efforts through the region to track like new forms of data, whether that be, you know, sensor based or you know, kind of regionally specific data, but and tying in like U of A, CATS, and Dr. Wu to what we could be doing amongst all our regional partners.
Yeah. Great point. I like it.
Awesome, we ready to move on to goal 4?
Please.
So if we are, for objective 2, I feel like the safety trends by location, and if we're going to adopt a Vision Zero or pursue elements of that. Oh, sorry for.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I misheard, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's no, yeah. And then identifying gaps in active transportation facilities and heat mitigation, like those are big we have like 3 big elements. Even just identifying gaps in heat mitigation could almost be a third objective, with the metric still being the PAG RMAP and elements for that.
Yeah, I think we did initially, trying to think back. I think we did initially have them separate, and then because they had the same performance metric, we put them together, but it is now a very large,
It is.
comprehensive objective.
It's a good point there, because
Yeah.
we can look at safety trends by location and look at what's actually happening there, and then also look at areas where heat mitigation might also be kind of a separate situation, right? I mean, you might have an overlap in where those are, but to look at them from a different point of view for each one, we could separate that out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, good point. I think that's why the wording is a little funky in there,
Yeah,
because we kept
yeah.
putting stuff together.
Yeah, we can definitely separate that out. That's a great point. Okay, goal 4. So this one is going to pertain more to connectivity, especially with activity centers. So provide active transportation connectivity to major activity centers. Our first objective, reduce the impact of barriers to accessing the active transportation network. So our performance metric we have currently is increase the percentage of residents that can access a high quality facility in 10 minutes by X% annually.
What do we mean by 10 minutes? 10 minutes to drive to a trailhead, 10 minutes to walk?
So it would be to walk to a high quality pet facility, bike to a high quality biking facility.
Okay.
And so we can use kind of walk shed, bike shed analyses for that.
Just like in some circumstances, 10 minutes is a long time, depending on how bad the
It's a
existing.
10-minute trip in total.
Yeah.
You don't reach one.
Yeah, any thoughts on alternative language that we could do there that's maybe more scalable, I guess is the word.
Yeah.
So I may be backwards here, but so it's the percentage of residents by high quality facility, and shouldn't it be the increase the number of high quality facilities by residents? So you're not increasing the population along these areas where there's high quality facilities. You want more high quality facilities. Am I backwards? Let me know.
No, I think we had this exact conversation.
No,
I think we originally wrote it the other way, talked ourselves into this way. But now that we're testing it with a larger group, we want to hear. So yes, the goal is to increase the number of high quality active transportation facilities, not move people closer to the existing ones. So I guess how should we phrase it that comes through? Because I think we wrote it away and then Jeanette liked a different way. And I was like, I didn't think about it like that. And we switched it and now it's.
Yeah, I don't think it's bad. I just think it reads like a land use.
A land use goal
Yeah.
rather than a transportation goal. Yeah. Yeah.
Which, I mean, that honestly raises like the question for me. I mean, to me, like, I don't have a problem with the way that it's worded as long as it's framed in a way that makes it clear that it's about building up transportation. But I'm wondering, I mean, is land use any part of this?
Not really, because at least PAG doesn't really have control over land use at all. You as member agencies, and that might go along with your, complete street policies or other things like that.
Sure, but like if we were able to, like, I'm just thinking it's like it's all well and good to build facilities that go to destinations, but sometimes you actually, you need the landowners to actually, bridge that last few feet, maybe. And I don't know. I mean, obviously land use and transportation are kind of one and the same, but I would love it if there could be at least some discussion of, actually fostering development along alternative transportation corridors and like, strategies for actually getting like landowners and developers to, actively be connecting to those facilities and actively be encouraging use of those facilities.
And then to tag on to what Ryan's saying, we also have land use or developers, property owners, however you want to phrase it, that put up walls. And so there's stormwater management, but it's a dip. And so to get from the sidewalk to the shopping or the whatever the facility is, the pedestrian has to go in the same way a car does. There's no gaps across those culverts. There's a wall that forces you to walk all the way around. So I don't know if that's measurable, but I think, following what Ryan was saying, it's kind of important that those are the barriers that sometimes we need to reduce or talk to people about how to make it better for active transportation.
Yeah. Yeah, good point.
Can that feed into our standards goals? Is there a way to link that in?
Maybe it's a little challenging because we can't dictate. It's more of on the local agency that's approving the permits to kind of force property owners to do things like that.
Elaine, it might behoove us if we're, speaking through or speaking with, stakeholders to develop a toolbox in the future, that maybe there's, a quick discussion on how those pieces connect between our preferred facilities for the region and how that might talk to each jurisdiction's, land use and, how that plays out with setbacks and putting in access lanes.
Hopefully through some of our design work that we're doing in this project too, if we know that there's some challenges that you guys face specifically when we do those cross sections, and we can look at some of those where we're not necessarily addressing a specific location, but we're providing an application that everybody can kind of tap into. Ideally, I mean, it would be great if you guys adopted those as your development standards, but at a minimum, it could be something that you guys can use if, let's say you guys have a rezoning or a development plan go in and you see some of these barriers that are being proposed, you see these random walls or just impediments for bikes and pedestrians, you can offer up a alternative. So the toolbox would have something that you guys can say, hey, this is what is regionally accepted, or this is what could be done to address sort of that barrier, if you will. Just a thought.
Yep. Okay. And Jeanette, you missed it. We got a question on the way that performance metric is phrased, and we talked about that for a really long time. It's reading as we're increasing the number of people that are near the active transportation facilities rather than increasing the number of facilities.
Yeah, him and I actually talked about this one this morning.
Okay.
It's one where, how do we, we can't really put people where we want them always, but we can put facilities where the people are. So, did we have a thought on this one? Or was it a different one? I'm not sure.
Yeah, we talked about
I think there's a few that are kind of written
Could
similarly.
we increase the percentage of residents that are served by high quality facilities?
Yeah, we could try
within
something like that.
10-minute, what it looks like.
And then like increase the percentage of high quality facilities located near a major activity center, like Cascades.
Yeah.
Is that the number then? Can we quantify that correctly?
Great question.
Because I think that's why when we were going to initially, we chose like the percentage of residents, but I totally understand that it sounds like we could be trying to move people, which isn't true.
So we'll keep working on refining that language there.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did have it as a percentage to mean that not only are you keeping up with all the new people moving to the region in serving that percentage, but you're gaining some ground on top of that. So if it's a mileage thing, then it's like, okay, we don't know if that mileage actually keeps up with growth in the region. So yeah, some of our considerations, we talked for about 3 hours only.
Yeah, because in my head, for objective one, I think of certain, okay, what does it look like here in town, like Third Street, like Boulevard, whatnot, but then what does that look like for Maryvale, or sorry, Midvale? And then what does that look like for Mariana and it's a 10-minute to ride?
Yeah.
Look like
I also think for the overarching goal, we might consider in addition to major activity center, open space, green space, or recreation areas. And I think that's really applicable too to some of our regional partners where, you know, accessing a state park or a trailhead by pedestrian or bike facility is a real game changer for folks.
Could, if you want to be more specific, you know, access to jobs and community destinations, something like that.
Okay. Anything else on objective 1?
Does that performance metric also include or account for the quality of the access? So if you go get there in 10 minutes, but it's over a pretty dangerous section of highway, does it account for like not all 10 minutes are the same kind of 10 minutes for that person?
Yeah, we're trying with that one, especially trying to work that in because it is about barriers and you know, crossing a major arterial or something like that can often be a barrier. So yeah, we can keep refining to try and get that point through of, yeah, maybe it's like and that's why we included high quality facility in there. It's not just like any old facility, but yeah, how do we address access to that from surrounding areas so we can keep.
Because I interpreted high quality facility as to be focusing on the endpoint rather than the act of like getting between, like from one to the high quality facility.
Okay.
So you're looking at it as the destination.
Is a high quality.
The high quality facility. Oh, we're looking at it more of the actual facility that's used. So the bike lane or the sidewalk
the
is a high
in-between.
quality
Okay,
facility.
gotcha.
Yeah.
So it's not just okay, it's connected, but it's connected in a way that people are comfortable using.
Okay, that makes sense.
This 10 minutes is, I don't like it.
It doesn't have to be 10.
I know, but but even like, I mean, who would accept, you know, driving 10 minutes to get to a high quality road? I mean, 10 minutes on a bike is a couple miles, so I would like to see it. Maybe, you know, maybe broken out by mode.
Okay.
You know, like on a bike, you shouldn't have to go 2 miles to get to a good facility.
Right.
It's walking, you might, 10 minutes might be more reasonable.
Yeah, good point.
And then I wonder if there's a way it would be beneficial to kind of think about maybe like the classification of whatever roadway you have to use. I don't know how to incorporate them, but
Yeah.
you know, like walking on a local, like a neighborhood road, residential road to get to an active transportation facility. That's fine, not ideal, but fine. But it's like if you're talking about
Walking on Speedway.
yeah. So yeah, we can definitely refine that one. But this has really been helpful for us to kind of revisit it. Okay, objective 2, increase active transportation accessibility to local activity centers. With the performance metric being increase the percentage of major activity centers that are directly served by a high quality facility by X%. So we may have some of the same comments on this one as we did the last one. But anything else as we look at objective 2?
My comment would be, one is the language there. It says local activities in the objective and then major activity in the performance metric. Is there a distinction there? Or is
That's a
that
good
just
point.
but also I'd be curious to know like what the list, like what is a local activity center? Like, is that a strip mall? Is that a school? Is that a park?
So yeah, things we're thinking of is things that are distributed throughout the region. That's why it says major activity centers. Then we have a different one for major because we refined that as we went. So local activity centers, we're envisioning things like schools, parks, shopping centers, things like that are kind of distributed throughout the region. And then we have a different objective further down about things that are like a regional draw where there's like a University of Arizona, a convention center, whatever.
Excuse me, folks. I'm sorry. This is Jason Bahi. My computer's acting up. I have to sign off real quick and then I'll try to log back in. Thanks.
Great, thanks.
Really was acting out, yeah. And I know we're getting down to our last couple minutes here, so I want to be respectful of all of your time. But yeah, I think, so that's, anyway, that's what we're envisioning for the local activity centers. And then we have a different metric that's related to mode share for the large activity centers that are, you know, 1 or 2 lots in the region.
And activity centers are employment locations are inclusive of.
Yep.
I have a comment just for all of the percentages here, which mirrors my comments on a previous goal, which is that I wonder if those percentages should be like more data driven based on like the facility improvements that are recommended in this plan.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons they're left as X's right now is we don't really know what the baseline is yet. And that can help us determine, you know, what is aggressive, what's reasonable. So, but yeah, good point.
Okay.
Sorry, one more question. So directly served, I mean, I don't want to harp on this too much, but like that sort of last few feet thing. I mean, a perfect example for me is like the Trader Joe's at Campbell and Limberlost. If you've ever biked to it from the loop, somebody at some point put in a little lump of asphalt to make a little ramp. The owners of the property weren't going to do it, and nobody has you know, formalized it by making, you know, real. But like, you know, it would be nice to have just the actual like access, like that last mile, you know, 100 feet or whatever, addressed somehow in this plan.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
All I need to move to
Yeah.
that.
Objective 3, or should I go straight to the?
Oh, sorry, there's 2 more.
Yeah, okay. Objective 3, provide first and last mile walking and biking connections to transit to expand the reach of alternative modes of transit. Performance metric, increase the percentage of residents that can access a transit facility by continuous sidewalk and bicycle facilities by X% annually. Any comments on this one?
So you have transit twice in objective.
Yeah, we
Right,
could,
right, so you could do expand the reach, expand first and last mile. And biking connection. I had it and then I lost it, but
yeah, we can wordsmith that a little better so that it doesn't say transit so many times in a close proximity.
I think it's just supposed to say the reach of alternative modes and then be done.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, objective 4, decrease vehicle mode share to regional activity centers. Performance metric, reduce the percentage of trips made with a vehicle to regional activity centers by X% annually. So trying to shift some of those trips over to bicycling and walking.
And are there differences between a regional activity center, a local activity center, and a major activity center?
So major is going away and we're gonna have local and regional.
Yeah.
So yeah, local, as I mentioned, are the ones distributed. Regional will define in our existing condition, we'll define both, but you know, things where there's 1 or 2 in the region that are major draws.
Came to mind when we were talking about regional activity centers here, at least for me, was like the convention center. To have a big draw, and sometimes you have multiple activities, you might have a concert and a hockey game and other activities going on. So to kind of shift the need for parking in those locations, maybe we can utilize bikes and bike facilities, streetcar facilities, transit facilities, and all different modes to those bigger areas that are pretty good opportunity areas.
Yeah, okay. We'll try to get through these last 2 pretty fast. So goal 5, support equity, sustainability, and health through the region's active transportation network. The first objective, ensure active transportation investments address network gaps in underserved community. For the performance metric, X% of projects fill network gaps in underserved communities as defined by USDOT. So trying to pull in more of that equity analysis. Objective 2, identify and prioritize the needs of vulnerable road users. The associated performance metric, X% of projects address a vulnerable road user need identified through the latest regional household travel survey. Objective 3, track health data related to heat vulnerability, I can't speak anymore, and prioritize improvements in areas with worse health outcomes. X% of projects incorporate heat mitigation measures in areas with identified heat mitigation needs. Any comments on this goal or objective or objectives?
It might also be in addition to heat vulnerability, areas of extreme, like flood prone areas.
Yeah.
That could be built into an objective as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Anything else?
Looking at, those without access to a vehicle and then their placement with healthcare facilities and what does that look like? If there's a gap from what transit can provide, but a bike facility or walking access.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. And then we'll move to the last goal pretty fast here, goal 6. Coordinate with member agencies to identify funding to implement the recommendations. So objective 1, identify eligible local, regional, state, and federal funding sources for high priority projects. So all high priority projects have at least one potential funding source identified. That will be the performance metric. So making sure that we can actually get these recommendations funded and in place. Objective 2, support member agencies in applying for competitive grant funding. So the performance metric would be leverage TIP subcommittee meetings to identify grant funding application needs of member agencies to implement the recommendations. Objective 3, support member agencies in obtaining the region's fair share of competitive federal grant funds. The performance metric, pursue X million funding per year in competitive grant funding at the regional level. So making sure that not only can these recommendations be implemented, but we're making sure that we're getting our fair share of funding for active transportation projects. Any comments on these? I know we're going through these last few pretty quick, so.
We could also set some sort of performance metric for our objective 1, where not only potential funding sources identified, but call out a percentage or a dollar amount of funding available, formula funding available for high priority projects.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, guys. As you can see, it's really easy to fall down the rabbit hole on the goals and objectives, and we have done that a couple of times already ourselves. So we'll go through this last part. I know we're already over time, so we'll go through this very quickly. So we are putting together some illustrative renderings. We'll make this PowerPoint available to you all to review in more detail here. Number 1, some potentially, preferred types of facilities. So as we're going out and communicating with the public and we want to talk about, what kind of facilities do you like? We want to give them a few options. So here we have a buffered bike lanes, parking protected bike lanes, physically protected bike lanes, and then what shared use paths look like and some kind of contexts that go with those. We have a couple of crossing types here, raised crosswalks paired with RRFBs, and then on larger streets, 2-stage crossings with RRFBs, or it could be a hawk or some other type of improvement. And then lastly, we have one complete, but we're doing another one right now of kind of somewhat common types of intersections that are found throughout the region, and what it would look like if we do some sort of transformative improvement for active transportation. So this one happens to be at 12th and 44th down on the south side of town. And then what happens if we go in and do all sorts of improvements from, you know, textured crosswalks, we have physically protected bike lanes, we have, you know, more shade trees there. And so we have developed this one. We're also doing one up at Swan and Sunrise. Another, you know, if you have a truly massive arterial intersection, what are some ways to improve the active transportation comfort, safety in those? So again, we'll distribute this to everybody so you can take a look, and if there's any comments or questions or other types of facilities that you'd like to see, we'd love to hear that from you. One thing I do want to talk about really briefly is, as I mentioned, we're going to be going into public engagement here soon. And so we've come up with some, you know, potential options for advertising mostly the virtual engagement, the in-person, we're going to just try to go where people already are. But as far as pushing out the website and the virtual map, so we can put together a press release that, you know, we'll work through PAG and then each of your agencies and PIOs to get that out to any publications that you have, content for social media posts, the images and the captions that you can put out through your various social media platforms that each of your agencies have. If you have any listservs, we can provide, you know, email content that can go out as an email blast, flyers that can be posted at activity centers, content for your websites. Is there anything else that you guys have used in your agencies that you're aware of that have been particularly good at getting people's attention to do virtual engagement? Yeah.
It's very time consuming, but we've done a number of yard signs, usually based around corridor improvements like bike boulevards, but knowing that folks are already really leaning on facilities like Third University or Treat Avenue Bike Boulevard, there's a ton of eyes along that corridor. So those yard signs, even just at like push button crossings, you know, intersections where we know folks are stopping, turnout at those events has been really great.
Good. Yeah, definitely an option. Cool. Anything else off the top of your heads? All right, we'll wrap it up here. So upcoming steps here. So we're gonna go ahead and finalize our vision statement, goals, objectives, and renderings, hopefully in April. We're gonna be starting our active transportation data collection in May. We're starting to pull in all the data that we can find publicly. We may work through you, this group, if there's connections we need with your GIS folks or somebody else. I think Hannah and Jenna have done a good job finding contacts for us, but if we're not able to get through to somebody, we may try and work for you. May and June will be our public and stakeholder engagement. June to July is when we'll have our draft working paper complete for this first task here and do our round of PAG committee updates. July and August, we'll be doing that heavy technical analysis. We'll bring it back to you all in September. As I mentioned, I think early September will be likely our next technical working group meeting, where we'll all get together as a group and have a lot more maps and graphics rather than tons and tons of words on the slide. So that is all. Again, thank you all very much for your time today. This has been super productive for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris and Kristen, our friend Kimley Horn. Also, just for everybody's information, this project does have a website. So we'll have all the materials that Kimley Horn puts together, as well as the rest of the consultant team and things that Hannah and I curate, will be available on that website. So stay tuned and keep your eyes open for that.
If we have a couple more comments that we weren't able to get to during the presentation, can I email those, and who should I email those?
Send a
to?
follow-up email with the
Okay.
presentation and.
When would you want any comments by?
If you could get those back in probably the next How soon do you think you can get the email out with the slides? Is that like a today thing? Today, okay. Yeah, if we could get that back maybe by the end of next week, I think that'd be
No problem.
good for us to finalize before we go out to the public. So. Perfect. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone online.